This program contains dramatizations of real people and events. Some names have been changed. This program is for mature audiences only. It contains graphic images which may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. A grisly double murder in New York leaves families stunned and a psychic afraid for her life.
Because I knew he was going to keep killing. I figured he might come after me if he found out I worked on it.
In Oklahoma, a family trip becomes a nightmare. Their children missing. Terrified parents seek the vision of a psychic.
I've worked gruesome cases, but this child tore me to shreds. This little girl just broke my heart.
When clues are scarce and answers elusive, investigators sometimes turn to a psychic witness. Albany, New York, November 23rd, 1976, the day before Thanksgiving. In a rundown section of the business district, Albany resident Oscar Ramsey enters the religious store his family owns. His son Curtis should be working with longtime employee Deidre Upton. In the bathroom, a body. He doesn't know who it is or what's wrong. Vagrants often wander into the store. Oscar tells police he thinks one is sick in the bathroom. Albany detective Jim Candlin is among the first on the scene.
This man came to the store, sir?
We confronted an elderly gentleman, and we asked him what was going on. He said he was like confused state. He says, I don't know who he is, but he's in my bathroom back there, and I think he's sick, coming out the street or something. I went over, went into the bathroom, went over the top of the body that was laying there, put my flashlight down. The chief says to me, what's it look like, Jim? I says, he's dead. I said his throat's cut from ear to ear, and he said he got multiple stab wounds in his chest.
What Oscar doesn't realize is that the body is that of his son, 55-year-old Curtis Ramsey. And he's not the only victim.
I looked around and I said, oh my God, there's another one. And it was the woman that worked there also. And she was in the supply closet on the floor. And she appeared to have multiple stab wounds in her chest also. And she was only a frail little thing, you know, really.
It's 62-year-old store employee Deidre Upton. Who could have done this?
We went up the street. There was a woman standing in the corner. And I said, did you see anybody go by you? He says, a big guy came running down the street a little while ago, and he was carrying something. What, he had stuff wrapped in his hand, bloody stuff. He went up the street up Broadway, and he dumped something in a barrel up there, and kept on going.
She describes him as an African-American male, tall and powerfully built, but she didn't get a good look at his face. Inside the barrel, among the trash, investigators discover a priest's vestment and a glove, both soaked in what appears to be blood. Nearby, a trail of blood drops.
The assailant evidently cut himself also, because in stabbing people a lot of times with a knife, if you come down hard and hit bone, your hand will come off the handle and get down the blade. And that's apparently what he did.
Investigators follow the blood trail, but soon it ends.
Trail ends right there.
They call for a canine unit. It's a horrific crime, a savage attack by a knife-wielding killer. And for what? The cash register is open, but missing only a few dollars. The canine unit arrives to try to track the killer. The dog follows the scent for several blocks. Yet the trail ends near a furniture outlet store. Detectives talked to employees there, but they didn't see a thing. With no other evidence, investigators check local arrest records for similar crimes, according to District Attorney Saul Greenberg.
And they wanted to know who were the recent parolees and what were their MOs, what was the nature of the crimes they committed.
One parole officer calls in with a good lead, according to New York State Police senior investigator Richard Gannon.
When he heard about the furniture outlet store, put it together that a recent parolee by the name of Lemuel Smith was working there.
37-year-old Lemuel Smith has spent several years in prison for violent crimes. But now, he's out. Smith has been free for several months, and so far he stayed clean.
Samuel, these gentlemen would like to speak with you.
Hello.
And he's fully cooperative,
How you doing, sir?
explaining he was having lunch with two friends at the time of the murders.
Yeah, I was working that day, actually. I had a late lunch.
The friends later confirm his story.
Take a look at your hands. Yeah, sure.
Officers check Smith's hands for cuts.
What do you think, officer?
Say anything.
All right,
They
Lemuel,
assumed that there had to be quite a gash for it to bleed so much, and they saw nothing. So that kind of took Smith out of the picture.
A brutal killer is still out there, but a psychic is about to join the search for him.
I saw it and felt it. I knew this man was a killer and would kill more and more. This is why I was happy they let me help them.
Together, the cops and the psychic will chase a serial killer who's just getting started. After a gruesome double murder in Albany, police clear their first suspect, Lemuel Smith, when his alibi is corroborated. With a killer on the loose, the city's terrified. Forensic anthropologist and author Dennis Foley.
Albany didn't have murders like this. This was horrendous. It was in a religious store. His throat was slashed, almost decapitated, and she had numerous stab wounds.
Rumors swirl that it was a cult killing. Albany police must uncover the truth. Officers find new witnesses. Two local vagrants who say they saw a man running from the store. A man who does not resemble the first suspect, according to senior investigator Richard Gannon.
The one person they did see come out of the store was a white man. He was moving quite fast up the street, running.
The witnesses know the man. He's Freddie Baker, another vagrant.
I don't know!
He swears he didn't do it.
So they gave him a polygraph test when they sobered him up. And he passed the polygraph test. But they also proved conclusively that he was in the store.
Baker says he went in that day to buy a card for his mother. He heard something in back.
He saw this huge man with the eyes of the devil, was the way he described him. And he just turned around and ran out of the store as fast as he could, and he never stopped.
The description of the man he saw leads police back to Lemuel Smith. About the same time, lab results come in. The killer's blood is type O, the same as Smith's. The lab tests also reveal a strange detail. Llama hairs were found at the crime scene. It's a type of hair used in furniture upholstery. Smith works at a furniture outlet store. Still, it's not enough for an arrest. A month after the killings in the religious store, a young woman is found nearby with her throat slashed. District Attorney Saul Greenberg.
It appeared, based upon the throat slitting, that possibly there could have been a similarity, and the same individual may have perpetrated this crime.
Once again, few clues left behind. With no leads, Albany's assistant police chief takes a new tack and calls in psychic Ann Fisher.
He is at wit's end, so he brings in a psychic. His deputy chief, his sergeants, they're appalled by this. This is so unprofessional, but they'll go along with it because they have nothing to lose.
Ann agrees to accompany detectives to the crime scene at the religious store.
They were desperate. They didn't know what to do. And I think it's because they didn't know where to go, and they had heard about me and felt that maybe I could help them.
The psychic asks that they tell her nothing about the case. All she knows is someone was killed.
When I walked in, oh, it was terrible.
She sees the killer.
My impression was he came in to sell something. He needed money. And I see the woman not being willing to do it. And so he went into a fit of anger, dragged her into the back room and stabbed her 15 times.
Ann knows exactly where Deidre Upton was killed.
While he was doing this, the owner of the store came in, and he tried to stop him, and he was killed too.
She said he almost was beheaded, which they didn't really put that in the newspapers.
I can see it.
Detectives ask about the killer.
I feel so sorry. And I said, well, he's about 40. He's black and about 6 foot.
But then, a confusing image. Sometimes, Ann sees 2 killers. The second assailant is smaller. She sees him committing the same acts, with the larger man watching. But the second assailant is not always there. Ann doesn't understand exactly what it all means. The procession continues outside. Ann feels the killer or killers fleeing the scene and knows in which direction.
I feel he went in this direction.
I walked out of the store in this sort of a semi-trance state, and I just pointed and I turned left.
The psychic goes right to the place the evidence was found.
They're covered with blood.
She says whoever did it threw something in the trash barrel. Bloody clothes. Then Ann leads detectives along the route they followed before, when they found the blood trail.
I was in a semi-trance, not a trance. I was able to walk, and still talk to them and answer them. But I started to see so much and feel so much.
She senses a building where the suspect lives or works.
I said, "It's green. It's around here. I know it is."
She spots the building.
Yes, yes.
The furniture outlet store where suspect Lemuel Smith works. Then, Anne gets a different sort of vision of the future.
I said, "I think you'll catch him, but I feel he's going to kill a woman soon, and don't ever tell anybody I ever worked on this case because I don't want it to be me."
The psychic knows the killer's not finished, but his next victim is impossible to predict. After a double murder in Albany, New York, psychic Ann Fisher has visions that implicate suspect Lemuel Smith, though she also sees a possible second assailant. And she predicts the killer will strike again. Senior investigator Richard Gannon believes Smith is guilty, but he needs proof.
Oh, we were all very sure. There was no question in any of our minds. It was just a case of getting that piece of evidence that would tie him up.
Police search Smith's locker at the store where he works, collecting hair samples. Lab tests reveal the hair is microscopically similar to victim Deidre Upton's, but this is before DNA analysis, and no exact match can be made.
You have to realize that you might arrest him, but then you have to go to court, and you have to try him. And if your evidence is such that the defense attorney is going to knock you out of the box, it's futile.
At the store, officers also spot Smith's paintings.
And he left the eyes blank and put foil paper behind the paintings, and it showed through. It was very vivid.
Creepy, but certainly not evidence. 6 months pass with no developments. July 22nd, 1977. In nearby Schenectady, New York, residents discover the body of 22-year-old Janet Tolliver. Again, a violent stabbing. And again, no good evidence. One witness reports seeing Lemuel Smith near the victim before her death, but police find nothing solid to tie him to any crime. Then, a month later, a local attorney notices something's wrong. His usually reliable secretary has not returned from lunch. He calls her parents right away. The family's worried. But it's only been a few hours, too soon for police to investigate.
The family had good friends who were CBers. They arranged to put out a bulletin or a notice every 15 minutes describing her car.
Amazingly, the system works. A motorist who heard the bulletin spots the secretary's car and contacts police on his CB. Inside the car, officers find the secretary and Lemuel Smith.
He was on the passenger side, said to the police that he was with his fiancée, and they were going into Albany.
She's got a different story. He abducted and assaulted her and was forcing her to drive.
When they arrested Smith at that point.
Finally, Smith is off the streets. And finally, police discover evidence. A Schenectady detective checking crime scene photos from the Janet Tolliver murder notices something.
Something that looked like teeth marks. Or subsequent to that, we got molds of Lemuel Smith's teeth.
A forensic odontologist compares the molds to the bite marks. An exact match.
As a result, we indicted him.
Police first charged Smith with Tolliver's murder. When they book him, they notice something detectives missed earlier, according to author Dennis Foley.
The gentleman would like to speak with you.
Initially, the detectives who were looking at his hands, they looked at the front of his hands and the back of his hands. They didn't look at the side.
Now police see a scar.
He had cut himself on the side by his knuckle.
Investigators confront Smith on the double murder in the religious store. He now admits he was there, but he's got a bizarre story about that day.
Lemuel Smith never admitted to any of these homicides. He said it was done by his brother John, and that he watched, and in some cases he tried to stop the homicides. But he watched from afar while his younger brother, the little brother, killed.
John actually looks like me.
Psychic Ann Fisher saw a second assailant in some of her visions, though he was unclear to her. Police learn a startling fact. Smith's brother died when he was a child. His involvement in the killings? Only in the mind of Lemuel Smith. Investigators believe Smith is displacing blame, and Ann picked up on the killer's dual personality.
Later, there was a picture that Lemuel Smith drew for his defense attorney, in which he depicts his self-portrait, just two people in it, Lemuel and a small brother, John. So this is how Lemuel Smith saw himself. He saw himself as two people.
Basically,
Smith explains why he was in the store,
what I can't remember actually.
and his story matches Ann's vision.
Lemuel Smith did a lot of paintings, and he tried to sell them at the religious shop because the paintings were of a religious nature, but they were very stark.
I remember the counter somewhat.
Police believe when the owners declined to buy, Smith became enraged and attacked. Lemuel Smith is sentenced to 25 years to life for each of the religious store murders. He earns 10 to 20 years for the attack on the legal secretary. Janet Tolliver's family declines to press charges to avoid the pain of a trial. Smith will never leave prison alive, thanks in part to a psychic.
Ann Fisher essentially identified Lemuel Smith. She also provided information about that he would strike again. So she gave the idea of a serial killer.
Ann Fisher helped Albany police know they were on the right track to stop a serial killer and put him away forever. In Oklahoma, the killer is the force of nature, and the psychic must somehow connect with a terrified little girl. Nestled in the hills of southern Oklahoma lies the small town of Davis, and one of the best swimming holes in the nation, Turner Falls Park. In the summer, families from all over travel to Turner Falls to relax in its cool waters. To get there, cars splash through Honey Creek, normally little more than a trickle. The creek adds charm to a beautiful place, usually. On July 8, 1994, the Sadler family heads to Turner Falls for the weekend. The two kids, Nathan and Wendy, have never been camping before and love it.
Oh, thank you. With all our love. Oh,
That night, the Sadlers enjoy their first campfire together.
Are you gonna eat yours, hon? I've had like 4 now. Do I get one?
Yes, you do.
Oh.
Blow it out, blow it out.
Eventually, worn out from swimming and hiking, they turn into sleep. But at 1 a.m., a violent rainstorm begins to pound the area. At 3 a.m., runoff water seeps into the family's tent. The worried mother and father decide to drive into Davis to find a motel. When they approach the crossing at Honey Creek, it's no longer a trickle. Dark water covers the road. No telling how deep it is. Mr. Sadler edges along, hoping for the best.
You okay back there?
But what's about to happen to his young family couldn't get any worse. At Davis, Oklahoma's Turner Falls, the Sadler family's camping trip turns dangerous when a heavy rainstorm batters the area. Trying to make it to a motel, the family drives toward a creek crossing. But in the darkness, Mr. Sadler can't see the normally shallow creek is raging. Suddenly, the water lifts the car and pushes it sideways. Slowly, the relentless flood bulldozes the car off the road and into the rushing waters below. Luckily, a campground worker sees the car swept away and calls Davis police.
We got that.
Officers assigned to the ranger station race to help. They search the water and spot the family. The cars come to rest in the middle of the creek, which is running hard and rising fast. The water pinning the car doors closed. An officer bravely wades out to get the kids. But with a roar, the water shoves the car loose and pushes it 100 yards downstream. The officers scramble to find another position for rescue. By now, other campers arrive to help. They'll do anything. But it's just too much. Mr. Sadler manages to crawl out his window and tries to free his family. But the powerful current rips him away and sweeps him downstream. He disappears into the darkness. And then, a flood surge tears the car loose again. Those watching are helpless as the rest of the family vanishes. Within minutes, additional police and firefighters arrive. They must reach the family somehow. Davis Police Assistant Chief Darryl McCurtain.
It was real tough. You're stomping through brush and trees and and rocks in wet, rainy weather in the middle of the night.
The car is no longer visible. The first good news comes when Mr. Sadler is washed ashore. But he doesn't know where his wife and kids are. The small rescue team fans out downstream, looking for any sign of them, according to Fire Chief Norman Shiplet.
We heard somebody holler around about where Blue Hole is, so we went around there, and she was on the east bank of the creek.
It's Mrs. Sadler, bruised, disoriented, alone.
And then she went to screaming that her babies were gone.
She says the flood tore them out of her arms. At least the children got out before the car sank.
We felt like they was probably alive because they were young, and we figured they would be fighting and try to, stay up on the water or try to get to the side of the creek.
EMTs rushed the parents to the hospital for treatment, while firefighters and police continue hunting for the kids.
We had a clothing description of the children and just began walking up and down creek banks, hoping that they'd made it to safety.
They searched throughout the night. No sign of the children. By dawn, the rain has stopped. But Honey Creek is still dangerous.
The water in the creek was still rising. It was still getting deeper. And with any little small creek like that, the water is real swift.
We're going to find these kids for the parents.
We need to find these children.
Exactly.
The search team is determined to find those kids. Studying the flow of the creek, they plan a methodical dragnet.
Our goal was to try to locate the children, so we organized some search parties.
We couldn't search the creek out too much. We could just go to the side of it the first day because it was running too fast.
They hope to find the kids on the banks, cold and wet, but alive. The search party swells to nearly 100, including civilian volunteers and officers from neighboring counties. Yet, despite their efforts, another night passes with no sighting of the children. On the second day, the number of searchers grows to more than 200, a huge outpouring for such a small town.
I've been on the department for 20 years, and I'd never seen anything like that. Never had to do any rescue to that degree.
The search now includes the Oklahoma National Guard and the Oklahoma Highway Patrol.
That's one of the amazing parts of the case, that everybody from different areas could come together and work together. Different organizations were assigned to different tasks, and just the way people communicated, the way we worked together, it's remarkable.
The flood has washed hundreds of items out of the campground, which slows the search.
There was so much debris and stuff down the creek, tents and clothes and ice chests and stuff that was in the creek area, and we had to search and go through all of that.
Each item could be related to the missing kids.
You find a piece of clothing or you find a kid's doll or anything like that, it just, it kind of give you some hope that, hey, maybe we've found something, and then it turned up to be nothing. But, there was false hopes like that every day.
When the current slows, divers from the National Park Service check the deeper pools. Halfway through the second day, the divers find the car.
You can imagine a car being tumbled down a creek and the force of water banging it against the rocks and everything. It was in pretty bad condition. You know, all the windows were busted out. The top of it caved in.
Rescuers find renewed hope in the fact that no bodies are inside the car. As the water recedes, it leaves piles of brush and driftwood. On day 3, a more grim discovery.
One of the National Guard people, they were cleaning out the creek, and it was approximately 2 to 3 miles from where the car went off. Well, he started looking and called some of the other boys over to help.
They've found young Nathan Sadler.
I think it depressed them because, well, they found the boy. He was dead.
The Sadlers have lost their son. Soon, they'll call in a psychic to look for their little girl.
And then I got a sense of her fear, how terrified she was. The roaring sound, trees breaking. I mean, the sound was absolutely deafening. Unbelievable sense of aloneness for that child.
After the Sadler family is swept away in a flash flood, the parents wash up safe on the creek banks, but their little boy is found dead. His sister, Wendy Sadler, is still out there, somewhere. Davis Police Assistant Chief Darryl McCurtain knows Wendy has a better chance of surviving than her little brother.
Being older and being a better swimmer, that might give her a little bit of a chance to make it to safety.
Fire Chief Norman Shiplett leads the search.
I talked with the parents and the family and told them that I wasn't giving up, you know, I was going to keep hunting for the girl. We kept hoping that maybe we'd find her. She'd be wandering somewhere.
But as days pass, hope fades. Discouraged, volunteers must return to their regular lives.
Go south side, check over there, check over by those trees over there.
We just dwindled down to where there was only like less than 10 of us looking.
Mr. and Mrs. Sadler cannot stop until they find Wendy or her body. After a gut-wrenching week of not knowing, the distraught mother gets the phone number to a psychic who's helped families find missing kids before. She calls Dr. Sally Heading in San Francisco.
The family was wild with anxiety. And so I believe this is one of the reasons that they did call me in, and it's just any last-ditch effort.
Sally contacts Assistant Chief McCurtain to offer her help.
When she told me that she was a psychic and everything, I kind of had doubts.
Can you tell me a little bit more about
But he's willing to try anything.
Beyond his own personal feelings was his desire to find this little girl. It takes a big person to take their personal belief system and set aside because there's something more important than themselves.
McCurtain tells her no details of the case. Sally fills them in on her own.
She described the terrain. She described Norman Shiplett, the fire chief, and said I was working closely with him and described landmarks along the river. It was convincing.
But what about Wendy? Sally breaks the news. The girl is dead, but she can't see where her body is. She promises to call back soon. For now, she must focus.
I like to be in a very quiet room so that I'm extremely relaxed and that things will begin to come through.
But at first, Wendy's too scared to let her in.
I talked to this little girl and I kept getting nothing and I kept getting nothing. I thought, if this little girl doesn't come to me and help me, I'm not going to know where she is. I didn't have a clue. And I really felt helpless about that. And finally I told her that her mommy couldn't stop crying and that if she could just show me where she was, that they could bury her and that would help them with her pain. And if she would trust me enough to come away from the light, that I promised not to hurt her, and I promised that she could get back to the light, that she would be okay. And the next thing you know, I got this strong sense of smell of a child that's been playing on a hot day. It's kind of a sweet, musky smell. And then I got a sense of her fear, how terrified she was. The roaring sound, trees breaking, unbelievable sense of aloneness for that child. Just broke my heart. I mean, this is a baby. It's my granddaughter's age.
The girl asks for Sally's help.
Before she would show me where she was, she showed me the diamond necklace, the cross. Her grandmother had told her she would have it on her 60th birthday. And she wants it now. She wants to be buried with it in the casket. And I promised her that I would get that for her.
Sally calls Mrs. Sadler and asks if Wendy was promised a necklace with a diamond cross.
And the mother completely broke down because she said, yes, that is my mother's cross, and my mother promised that she would give this cross at 16. I can't believe you know this. Is my little girl at peace? And I said, most definitely. She is so at peace that she didn't want to come away from where she is.
Sally reaches out again, telling Wendy the necklace is waiting for her. She just needs the girl's help to find her body.
And then she took me by the hand and took me down the river, and she showed me where she was. She is the one who showed me, not me. I saw on the right-hand side going down the river the hull of a wooden boat. And then 50 yards down, I saw a culvert.
The girl points to a place between the blue boat and the culvert. Sally realizes Wendy's pointing out the location of her earthly body. The sadness is overwhelming.
This child tore me to shreds. This little girl just broke my heart.
As difficult as it is, Sally perseveres, determined to help bring Wendy Sadler home. After a flash flood sweeps away Wendy Sadler, the family calls in psychic Sally Heading. Sally connects with a little girl who shows her where her body is. The psychic calls Assistant Chief Daryl McCurtain.
And I told him that I saw that they had to go down a county. They hadn't gone down south enough.
Sally tells him about the landmarks Wendy's spirit pointed out to her.
I said, this is what you look for on the right-hand side when you see the hull of a wooden boat. And then 50 yards down, you'll see this concrete culvert. And between, right in the middle of those two, that's where she is.
McCurtain decides to take the risk and follow the psychic's directions.
I was kind of afraid to admit to anybody that I'd talked to a psychic. You know, we being from rural Oklahoma, it's, you go out and tell somebody you talk to a psychic, they're probably going to think you're crazy.
But they'll do anything to find Wendy.
We didn't discount it. I mean, we went ahead and followed every lead we had.
As the search ramps back up, Oklahoma Governor David Walters flies in to help, offering more resources from the state. He holds a press briefing with Davis Fire Chief Norman Shiplett.
We was trying to stir up a little more interest and try to get more people to help search for the little girl. And after they said, get in with us and we'll search the area here, you know, from the air in the helicopter.
They head south, over the next county, as Sally instructed.
We got about 8 miles down the river, and this pilot from the highway patrol plane hollered at us and told us that he had spotted something in that curve and wanted us to go check it out.
The helicopter can get closer.
We went down and dipped down low in the helicopter where we could see, and you could see a part of a leg. So.
Searchers and airboats rush to the site to retrieve the body.
She was a lovely little girl, just lovely. She touched my very soul.
To everyone's amazement, the location has all the landmarks Sally predicted. Wendy's between a blue boat and a culvert.
For somebody to describe a blue boat along the edge of the river and for you to actually see that blue boat, it's just amazing. It just sends chills all over your body because here somebody is 2,000 miles away and can describe something in detail to you.
Sally's other predictions also prove accurate.
She described that the girl would be partially clothed, that she was going to be partially covered with dirt and debris, and that she'd be laying on her back. And that's how the girl was found.
I pray this family is healed. It's a terrible tragedy for anyone to have to go through. Just terrible.
Sally knows. She herself has lost a child. Mr. and Mrs. Sadler can finally lay their 2 children to rest.
There is in our society the need for conclusion and finality so we can go on. It's not that we're ever going to get over it. You do not get over that, but you learn to go on with your life. I believe that we have the ability to learn lessons from these tragedies and become more than we were before, to reach out and help others, and to become a kinder, nicer, more aware human being.
Assistant Chief Darryl McCurtain thanks Sally for helping them find the kids they searched so long for.
If I ever had a large case where there were missing people or anything, I would call a psychic again. And I've still got Sally's business card 11 years later.
The stories couldn't be more different. A madman on the loose, leaving a trail of blood and death behind him. And an unexpected storm, wrenching 2 children from their parents' arms. But both cases left families torn, and police willing to do anything to help, including working with gifted psychics to put their amazing abilities to the test.